Hi, everybody. It's lovely to be here. I've had an awesome morning so far. Danielle, I loved your talk on networking. I did a pretty poor job of implementing it at lunchtime, but that's by the by. Carly, public speaking, glossophobia, is it called? Turns out I have that. This is horrendous. But I've also learned that it's okay to read from a script, which is what I'm going to do. And the Interrobang guys, gang even, they were pretty funny, and I spent 4 years getting paid to be funny, so I'm not the funniest in the room. And I've also learned that if I've got anything to do with it, in 10 years' time, my company TMB will be full of lesbians, but there we are. Okay, so this is my talk. So my name is Hayley, my pronouns are she, her, and my talk today is titled From Swearing to Peering, How the F Word Helped Me Get My First Job in Tech. So if you're sat here or at home, and you're thinking, do I really mean that F word? Yes, I do. Okay, so firstly, a little bit about me. As I said, my name is Hayley. I'm a full stack engineer at a company called TMB Marketing and Communications. I work in the digital side of TMB, where we build reporting and marketing platforms for networked businesses. And our primary market is the automotive industry. I'm a career changer. This time last year, I was in the final month of completing a software development bootcamp. And I was probably also knee-deep in biscuits, bugs, and burnout, pretty much. Since finishing the bootcamp and securing my first job as an engineer, I've spent many hours in conversation with other career changers, talking about applications, interviews, how to frame your previous experiences relevant to a job in tech. I'm actually quite fortunate that topic of transferable skills has, believe it or not, been part of my upbringing. My mum ran a business for 30 years writing CVs, so I'd consider it probably part of my DNA at this point. Other than that, I'm a former swear extraordinaire. I try to tone it down a little bit these days. And yeah, I always buy my nan a rude birthday card. Short one on that. She actually got awarded last night in a community awards ceremony for decades of fundraising. Lovely little glass trophy, dressed up all nice. On Monday, she turns 94 and she'll open a card that has ... penis on it from me. So there we go. Okay. So the talk is focused around how everybody has experience that is relevant to getting their first job in tech, no matter what that background is. If you read job descriptions, grad program brochures, heck, even Reddit forums, then you might be easily convinced that you need a degree to get a job in tech. If you haven't a degree, there may be some A-levels in a STEM subject. If you haven't got one of those, then perhaps a previous job in a tech adjacent field. I don't have a degree. I've got one A-level, media studies, if you're wondering, and that was a push. And I've never worked in a tech environment. Have you worked in retail? You've had some experience managing stock, that's resource management, customer service, that's user experience and problem solving. Time for a quick bit of audience participation. I know it's cliche, but kind of just roll with me on this. So those in the room can do a show of hands. Anybody, hi, who's watching virtually, then perhaps you can just put a raised hands or a thumbs up in the chat. So what have I got? Okay, if you've got a degree, raise your hand and keep it raised. Keep your hands raised. God, there's a hell of a lot of you. I feel really bit daft, you know. Never mind, okay. So keep your hands raised. If you've ever had a job of any kind, raise your hand as well. And then lastly, if you've got some experience doing any volunteering work, an educational project, anything like that, get your hand up as well. So like, if you look around, pretty much every single person in this room, and I'm sure at home, has got experience that is relevant to getting a job in tech. Okay, so we're going to talk about how all experience is relevant and how that fits into the broad range of skills required to be a successful developer. We'll look at some examples, some real, some that I made up, and also look at identifying your own transferable skills and how they're applicable to your first role in tech. Okay, so I reeled you in with the promise of swearing. Let's get into the title of this talk. How did swearing help me get my current job? So prior to joining a bootcamp and retraining as a software engineer, I ran a small greeting card publisher. So in essence, I designed, outsourced the manufacture and sold greetings cards. And that was to consumers across the world, to shops and boutiques through wholesale channels and through various licensing platforms. So your Thoughtful, Scribbler, Moonpig, the likes like that. 90% of those cards are filled with expletives. So before becoming a self-titled swear extraordinaire, I spent nearly a decade in the motor insurance industry. I worked in various functions of a claims department, and my last role specialised in what were termed prestige clients, take that as you will, and their involvement in accidents with telematics data. If you're not sure what that is, it's basically a box that's fitted to a vehicle, and it records how people drive, and specifically in the event of an accident, the kind of mechanics as to how that accident occurred or what happened during the course of that accident. In my current role, I've got nothing to do with the greetings card industry, nothing to do with e-commerce. I'd like to say nothing to do with swearing, but I mean, that's probably up for debate if we're honest. And if you're going to talk to others and try and impart some valuable knowledge, as many others have done here today, I think you should go with what you know best. And that's my own personal experience. So how did I frame my experience to suit a particular role that I was applying for? I'm going to break this down into 4 parts. So we've got technical, soft skills, business specific, and company values. What are they for TMB, the company that I work for? Aside from the specific technologies that we use, the first 2 are likely to be similar or a bit more generic for most roles that you'd apply for. The technical. On a really high level, we use TypeScript, React, AWS, and GraphQL Apollo. Soft skills, problem solving, communication, translating user stories is a big one, and attitude. Business specific, so this is when it gets a little bit more detailed. Our primary market is the automotive industry. We have a market share of about 50%, I think, of the automotive industry, which is quite considerable. We create asset creation software, content management systems, systems for reporting and data, incentive platforms for people who've ever worked in an incentive-driven environment. And we also have an event communications arm, which does link in with the software a little bit. Company values, innovation and creativity, huge focus on client outcomes, super, super important to the company. They're not a big corporate, it's a very family-oriented culture there, and working from home is a big one. The developers work entirely remotely, and so time management, self-motivation is a pretty big one. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about technical ability here. So TMB were very aware that they were hiring an entry-level developer. They'd communicated that they can teach the tech, but they can't teach the attitude. So I knew immediately I didn't have to prove how proficient I was at using this stack, but I did need to kind of show my attitude to both learning and to my career as a developer. So with that in mind, I then researched this stack. I was able to communicate the technical skills that I had developed in bootcamp that were relevant, and then further communicate what I knew about the tools and technologies that I hadn't used, but express my eagerness to learn them. So, for example, I was genuinely interested in learning about GraphQL. I'm still really rubbish at it, but there we are. What would I do if they asked me about that at interview? So these are 2 options I could have chosen from. Both show that I haven't used GraphQL, but the first one communicates my eagerness, that I took time to research a tool that matters in the company's day-to-day development. I'm not going to read that out for you because it's massive. The other one just says, yeah, I've heard of it, but I haven't used it. I mean, I can leave it up to you to decide which one of those is better, really, can't I? Okay, let's go on to soft skills. So there's so many soft skills that are hugely valuable as a software developer. I talked to my boss, Pete, about what I was going to say today, and we were talking about the different types of people that you could work with. So Pete is a principal engineer. He's had experience working with and hiring many developers over his career. And he sort of pointed out to me that you can hire somebody who is seen as a genius, then, for want of a better word, in programming, give them a ticket and they'll just get on with it. They might not have the soft skills to be able to communicate why they've approached the problem in the way that they have, or they might have solved the problem, but by not collaborating with others on it, they've built this solution in such a way that another developer would never be able to work on that code. And that's obviously no good if they leave the company or anything like that. Well, lost my place, haven't I? Okay, so yeah, my personal examples then. I was able to show how I've got these skills, provide evidence of them. So communication, I've worked with many people in my previous careers. I was able to give a big variety of examples of that. So I've dealt with people who are sometimes having the worst day of their life after a car accident, motivating members of teams that I've worked in. I've dealt with these prestige clients, as I said, can often have very specific requirements as to how they want things done. Through my own business, I've managed communication in a sales environment. I've written newsletters to my customers. I've written blog posts since finishing my boot camp about my journey as a career changer. And somehow I'm managing to communicate all of this to you right now, which is a miracle in itself. Problem solving. So when learning programming, solving problems is a huge part of the day. There are examples that I could give from the hours I'd spent fixing bugs in boot camps, as I'm sure everybody else here can do the same. But I could also attribute this to challenges in my previous careers. So finding innovative solutions to save costs on insurance claims, dealing with the absolute pure carnage that was the mail system during COVID, and finding a way to manage my customers' expectations, even personal anecdotes. So I referenced how I have ADHD, and I actively find logical solutions to help me tackle the challenges I face every day. That's why I'm reading from a script today. I'm sure there's fellow neurodivergent people amongst this audience who will sympathize, with the struggle to stay on track. Any of you who've had a coffee chat with me will know that that is a problem for me specifically. And then lastly, translating user stories. I could specifically attribute this to how in a claims situation, I had to ensure I asked the right questions so that I could translate what was sometimes extremely vague incident reports. And that allowed me to come to the right conclusion of liability. So who was at fault really? And there's also how I would have to understand my wholesale customers to make sure that I was offering cards for popular occasions, buying habits in stores, regional buying habits, if anything. Okay, business specific. So I think this is where it maybe gets a little bit more detailed for TMB specifically, but there's value, I think, in showing you how I've linked my previous experience then to this particular situation. So automotive industry. Again, as I said, I've had nearly a decade of experience working within motor insurance. I was never a dealer salesperson, the users of many of our systems, nor was I a mechanic, but I had spent years understanding the people that use the automotive industry, drivers. I have a reasonably good knowledge of cars. So if TMB's clients say was Volkswagen, for example, I'd be fairly confident that I know a reasonable amount about those vehicles and the vehicles that they're selling. Asset creation and content management systems. I didn't have experience of building either of these, which is what we do day to day in TMB, but I did have experience of using them through my own business. So who do we build systems for? Users. You can play to the fact that you are a user of many of the systems that you might actually be asked to create, because there's value in seeing it from both sides. I knew how client-focused TMB was. So whilst I couldn't walk in and build a CMS on day one, I could understand the usability of one and the considerations that would need to be made for the users of that system. Reporting and data, I didn't have a lot of experience here, but I had worked in a telematics department. So I was familiar with reading that data and translating it into something useful. And I had experience of creating my own, looking back, they were pretty appalling reports to look at my own sales data and understand what were the valuable parts of that information. And then briefly then incentive platforms, again, not something I'd ever created, but I had worked in incentive-driven environments, so I understood the user perspective. And event communications. It's not something that I'm involved in day-to-day in TMB, but I have exhibited my own business at a trade show. And the insurance company that I worked for used to throw massive events every 2 years. So I've kind of seen what it takes to create a standout event from a trade show perspective right up to the big kind of company events that we create at TMB. Company values is the next one. So innovation, creativity and innovation is a big part of TMB. And having worked in a creative industry previously, I could show plenty of evidence for this. On a high level, I could show how I saw a gap in the market, which was for sweary cards that, in my opinion, weren't tacky, that used high quality materials, environmentally friendly UK manufacturing, and they were available to wholesale channels, not just to online consumers. And then I created a business out of it. And that's not a sales pitch, by the way, you can't buy them anymore. There's a focus again on client outcomes. Making greetings cards does sound fun, but if you don't have customers, you haven't got a business. So again, I could show how my own focus on my own client outcomes, great service products that sell well, aligned with TMB's own focus. And then there's the working from home, time management and self-motivation. People think everybody wants to kind of work from home. I'm going a little bit off script here, but I know that a lot of us want to work from home and some people want to work in an office. It is quite personal. But There's a lot of rhetoric around people working from home being lazy, which I completely disagree with. And I think that if you can show your ability to manage your time, to kind of self-motivate, and that working from home is actually how somebody gets the best out of you, then a company isn't going to turn that down if they can see that that's the actual truth. I think I wrote something on LinkedIn last week, and it was to do with a post I'd seen for ADHD. And I had to write like an article sort of thing for work, and I just couldn't get started. And I've got a treadmill at home. So I got on a treadmill, was dancing around to Ray, singing like an absolute moron. And I wrote the entire thing in 40 minutes. If I'd been in an office, there was absolutely no way that would have got done at all. I'd probably still be dancing to Ray, but there wouldn't have been any work getting done. Okay, so yeah, as I say, I used the fact that I'd had my own previous business, small business. I know a lot of people do have side hustles. It doesn't matter how small it is if you can use it as evidence. Making pivots that my small business did during COVID shows my ability to adapt and evolve to meet my customers and my own business needs. And then lastly, not a big corporate, family-oriented culture. So this was actually really important to me. I'm in my mid-30s. I'm not living in a big city. I've been in London for 4 days. It is incredibly overwhelming. The days of regular drinks after work and the many sociable benefits that companies offer these days were not something on my radar. I wanted to be in an environment that supported my growth in my career, but it didn't expect me to be in the pub on a Friday night in order to advance it. And I'm sure many of you know the cultures that I'm talking about. TMB had openly talked about how this wasn't part of their own culture, so I made a point of it in my application. I actually referenced that I'd rather be on the mountain with my dog or taking the family little ones for a Friday McDonald's treat than be in the pub wondering whose round it was. After 2 interviews where I told Pete, my manager, that I once changed debugged using the word Shakira. Another where Ian said that he wouldn't ask me any technical questions because he wouldn't know the answer. And I told him that might work out quite well for me. They offered me the job, so hooray for me. But what about you? How can you use your own previous experience to show your suitability for an entry-level developer role? Before I go on to examples, I want to touch briefly back on those first 2 at a more generic level. So technical, I'm not going to dive into it because honestly, I don't think it's something I've got the expertise to confidently talk about. However, I do think it's important for you to recognize that whilst you're learning to code and you can be language agnostic, it's better to feel confident in one language than write hello world in 10. Where do your kind of current skills lie now? Pick 1 or 2 and just build on them. Company values, again, they're going to be different for everyone. I personally only see it as a positive if you can find a way to align with them, as long as it's genuine. If you're really eco-conscious, you spend your weekends litter picking on the beach, you're probably not going to mention that in an interview with a company where it doesn't matter. But you absolutely would if you were interviewing with someone who has a huge focus on their environmental practices and policy. Interviews and applications are scary, horrible, many things. Most of those applications will go through ATS screening, but eventually they will be read by a human, I hope. And connection is how we build relationships. So don't be afraid to talk about things that matter to you when they're relevant. So enough of the philosophy. What about your previous experience? So I'm going to show you some examples of job roles. Some people I've spoken to haven't thought were relevant to their applications, and in some cases actually missing from their CV, and also a more generic one that I've cobbled together. So let's start. Look at that bit of illustration. Those slides were looking a bit boring up until then, weren't they? Okay, so this person, they're in their words, they work in a family takeaway part-time. What do? Do they serve food? Do they take phone calls? Do they cook? They probably do all of those things. In this case, they were also the restaurant manager. So this is what they also do. They oversee day-to-day operations, including opening and closing procedures. And this is a bit wordy, but bear with me on it. Implement and deliver training to staff members, manage inventory levels, ordering of supplies. They handle customer feedback, complaints, inquiries in a timely manner, and they implement and maintain hygiene standards, sanitation protocols, and cleanliness throughout the establishment. Doesn't really seem very techy at the moment, I don't think, at a face value. And then their achievements. They've increased restaurant ratings from 3 to 4.9 stars on the Just Eat platform, and they've implemented new customer ordering software, optimizing delivery logistics to increase customer satisfaction. So let's just quickly look at those. First one, They've got experience leading, they take responsibility, they can follow procedures. They might have even written the procedures that they're following if it's a family takeaway. Secondly, they're able to take information, derive a training plan from it, and teach that information to others. User stories 101, as far as I'm concerned. Managing the inventory levels has more responsibility. Are they doing that through a database? Do they manage a system for stock control? Have they implemented their own database to keep track of this? And they've got communication skills. They're able to deal with difficult situations like complaints. They're receptive to feedback. And then lastly, the hygiene. Again, how are you going to segue that into software unless, you know, you're software for engineer for, I don't know, I can't think of a hair shampoo person off the top of my head at the minute. But still, it shows that they take pride in doing a good job and providing a good service. Hygiene is integral to the restaurant industry. They understand the things that are actually important to the success of their business. And if we go on to the achievements, the first one, okay, I mean, it's got the Just Eat platform written in it. We know that that's a software firm in London. But just bringing up the ratings kind of shows that they're results driven, that they're motivated to improve performance. And they've got to focus on client outcomes. But that second one about implementing the customer ordering software, it's got the bloody word software in it. Like, they've implemented a software system into the business. They've improved the delivery logistics. And that software system that they've integrated has got a grad scheme for developers. And I think an early careers program as well. So it just shows how something as simple as somebody feeling like they work in a takeaway actually has got quite a lot of relevance if you find the role that it relates to. So yeah, I mean, if this looks like you, I'd go to Just Eat's website or Deliveroo. We don't have either of them where I live, so you're all right. Okay, so that's kind of like a really specific example. And I can't go through like loads and loads, of course, today. So I've kind of tried to pick just a few others that have got like an overview. So if we kind of say, on the first one, you've got a bakery assistant at a supermarket called Little. A call center, yeah, we all love those croissants and the 69p donut, love that. A call center customer advisor for a mobile phone provider called Lodaphone, and a barista at Moonbucks. Their day-to-day duties, they're all quite different. I mean, I can quickly whiz through these, but if you look at the bakery sort of side, we've got things like unpacking stock, providing customer service, helping customers with queries, the actual baking of the baked goods, and then sort of, you know, just keeping on top of that, making sure that the stock is topped up, the dates are all good, everything still looks clean and fresh. The person in the middle, the call center agent, again, handling inbound calls, billing queries, customer complaints, working as part of a team, and key performance indicators. And then the last one, a barista, preparing and serving a variety of hot and cold beverages, handling payments using a POS, point of sale system, customer service, cleanliness, hygiene and safety standards, and stock management. All three of those roles have at least 6 skills in common that are transferable and required to be a good software developer, in my personal opinion. Problem solving. The bakery assistant may need to diagnose small problems with baking equipment or notice a particular item sells out quickly, so they proactively ensure the quantity of that item is increased. Customer service agent has to troubleshoot issues like billing discrepancies, service issues, or any other problem presented to them by their customer. The barista will need to fix issues with coffee machines or handle customer complaints. Attention to detail, checking sell-by dates, ensuring the freshness of bakery items, ensuring accuracy in billing information. For anyone who's trying to understand a mobile phone bill, no, that's an absolute nightmare. The barista, they've got to follow specific recipes and preparation methods. The sheer kind of quantity of drinks then that they have to deal with means that they need to make sure the right one, especially when you've got concerns like allergies and different milks and things like that. Communication skills or customer service. In the bakery, they're providing excellent service at checkout. They're assisting customers with queries or locating items. Call center work is pretty much permanent communication mode. I've done it. You're handling a variety of queries, complaints, and all from a variety of different customers. And the barista is greeting those customers, offering suggestions, alternatives, ensuring customer satisfaction at all times. I know it seems a bit dry, but the point is that when you look at your previous experience and you think it is dry in relation to tech, it is not. you can squeeze every last drop out of it. Teamwork and collaboration. All of these people work as part of a team, whether that's 2 or 200. None of them can do their job single-handedly, and they all require working together to achieve the best outcome for their customers or to meet team targets. And adaptability, for anyone here who has worked in these roles, you'll understand there's a degree of adaptability and flexibility. You may have to take on extra duties in the event of staff absence. Maybe you've had to work on late to ensure all your duties were complete. And perhaps you've had to stop making coffees and be solely on checkout if there's suddenly an influx of customers. Or you've had to adapt your communication style to deal with a particular type of customer. You could take a phone call, this is a real example, a phone call from a rear admiral in the Navy, and the next caller is someone who works in a cafe. Society will try and dictate to you and convince you that one of those people will be far more demanding than the other. And I can tell you from experience, it's not the way around that you're thinking. And lastly, time management. Again, all of these roles require you to manage your time effectively. So when do you bake the items to ensure they're fresh and available for the first influx of customers? How long can you spend writing up notes after that last phone call? Are there calls waiting? Have you got time to start a thorough clean of equipment, or is it nearly lunchtime and your coffee shop will be full of customers in 10 minutes time? Action. Okay, we're past the boring bit. So how can you action what I've talked about today? I want to leave you with some clear sort of actionable steps then that you can take as you navigate kind of getting into the tech industry in junior and entry level roles. Every experience that you've had is a piece of a puzzle, and it makes you a unique candidate. Everybody here is unique in a candidacy for a tech position. You just need to find where you fit. So first things first. Oh, I hope there's a slide here. Yes. Okay. Inventory your experiences. So first thing to do is take some time to write down all of the jobs that you've done, volunteer work, educational achievements, significant personal projects that you've undertaken. And I'm talking essays, dissertations, anything like that. Write it all down. Next to it, list the skills that you used or developed during those experiences. And if you're struggling to identify the individual skills, first start by breaking it down and write down what you did to complete your duties, tasks, or projects. Don't underestimate anything. Even the smallest tasks can showcase your capabilities. Match the skills to your job descriptions. So if you look at job listings on the internet and find ones that interest you in a tech field, make a list of the qualities that they're looking for. And the tech obviously is important. You need to make sure that, you know, you're either agnostic or you can offer some kind of value in that area, but look at all the soft skills, look at everything else that they're after. Go back to your inventory and match your experiences with these skills. Find any way to segue them in, because I promise you there's a way. And you'll be surprised how much you've actually got to offer. Craft your narrative. So based on that matching exercise, start crafting your narrative. How do your experiences and the skills you've developed prepare you for a career in tech? Practice telling your story, focusing on how your individual background gives you a unique perspective and set of skills. And tailor your application materials. I am not a recruiter, I never have been, but again, I know this is personal opinion. I can't say it enough. Use that narrative to tailor your CV, cover letter, and LinkedIn profile. Highlight the transferable skills and experiences that align with the tech roles that you're interested in. Do not have one CV. Have a general base CV and tailor it for each application that you make, because you will have unique experiences and specialities that you can give to every single job. If I gave a general CV to TMB, I would not have the confidence to stand here and tell you I'm a software engineer, because I wouldn't be one. And no, that's it for that. I've given you 4 things. Wonderful. Okay, wicked. We're going to wrap it up. Okay. It's a bit wet, which is why I've written it down, because I don't do the mushy stuff. But I do just want to remind everybody here that your journey into tech is as unique as you are. Paths that we take are really straight lines. It's detours. It's like all the personal shit, all that nonsense, all the scenic routes and things like that that make our stories worth telling. In the tech industry, innovation, creativity, and problem solving is prized, and diverse experiences and skills that we've all honed along the way are invaluable assets. So embrace your background, and whether that's filled with F words or ones that are more along the lines of, I want to speak to a manager, then remember it's not just about coding skills or technical prowess. It's about solving problems, thinking creatively, and working collaboratively. These are the skills that make a great developer, and you've been building them all along in every job, every educational setting, every challenge, and every success. God, I sound like Gandhi, don't I? If you obviously want to keep this conversation going, connect with me after the talk on LinkedIn, email. I really should have put a QR code or something, shouldn't I? But I just basically wrote my name and where I worked. But there's not many of me. And yeah, so you'll find me. I'm more than happy to help, like, talk through this stuff. If anybody's got a specific question, has a job role, and they're thinking, how the hell am I going to segue this in? I'll try my best to help you. And if you take one thing away from my talk today, if I've bored you to tears, just make sure it's the knowledge that you have something unique and valuable to offer. Be proud of your journey and let it be the fuel that drives you forward in your tech career. So the codebar community is comprised of individuals with diverse experiences, fresh perspectives, and the resilience to turn challenges into opportunities. And the tech community is richer for having us in it. Thank you very much for listening. And because I've behaved myself all talk, have a fucking awesome day.